Hi folks, how's it going? First and foremost, I have a cold, I am miserable, and this may not be as long a video as I normally do. As you can probably hear, my nose is bunged up, my throat is very sore. But, I promise to do multiple videos a week, and I will not let you down. I do not want to let you down, so there you go. Like the channel, subscribe, go to the Discord, it's free. There's no reason why you shouldn't be on the Discord if you're watching the channel. um, where all this stuff gets discussed as we go over everything that we want to talk about. So, today we're going to be discussing Games Workshop staff because I've had a few questions around the similar kind of thing relating to GW staffers and how they're trained and what they go through. Because people who want to apply for a job at Games Workshop want to know what it entails, what they're going to be asked to do, and whether the horror stories that they keep hearing are true or not. Okay. So, one second. I'm afraid that's going to be a fixture in today's video. I'm going to be stopping a little bit just to make sure I give my voice a bit of a rest as I'm going over stuff as I'm talking. So, first of all, what I wanted to go over was 4 questions. And those 4 questions are: what do they actually do, GW staffers? Okay. How are they trained? Do they enjoy it? And what kind of person is a GW staffer, right? Now, a lot of my friends, I would say at least 6 now, have worked for Games Workshop. And I've done pretty well. I've worked their way up and I've left eventually to go on and do bigger and better things. And most of them have gone into game development, weirdly. But all of them seem to leave for the same reason. And that is the fact that they can't really deal with the constant drive for sales anymore. And I've said this in my previous video as well, in that if I had my own way, and I think if a lot of people had their own way, GW stores wouldn't be stores anymore. They'd be hobby centres. But, there we are. First things first, what are they actually told to do? So when you get into Games Workshop, you're not given the little black book, which will be in our next video. Our next video is just going over the, maybe the next video or the video after that, I'm not sure. But it'll be going over the black book that you're given when you're a manager, and that is the Games Workshop Bible of Retail, essentially. Telling you how to sell models, what the company, the standards are, what they're hoping to achieve, where they're hoping to go. It's the first one where you'll see the mission statement of Games Workshop, which is: we want to create the greatest wargaming models in the world, and we want to remain doing so forever. That is the Games Workshop motto. Again, I'm sure you can get it on a Google search. Now, that is the official mission statement of the company. I'm not sure whether it's changed or not. I know Google's is, don't be evil, or, things like that, but, or used to be anyway, until they got rid of the don't be evil, because they realised they were evil anyway. So, what are they told to do? So when you're going into Games Workshop on your starting there, it always depends on your manager. From my own experience, my manager at the time was the kind of manager who had an entire file of training resources, and these are things that he's either worked on himself and typed up, or things that he's gone and got off the internet and made Games Workshop-y, right? And in doing so, he basically he laminated it all and gave you a book and said go off and during work time, which is fair enough, you're getting paid for this, so it's okay. He would say, yeah, can you go and sit upstairs or sit down over there in the store somewhere and work through this book, work through this training book. And a bit weird, considering it felt like you were in school, felt like you were back in secondary school being asked to do some homework. But, a lot of these things are very easy and very, how do I put it, almost, don't forget to breathe sort of advice, when you're walking in, make sure you put one foot in front of the other, sort of a thing. But this was I would consider the manager that I worked for on the very high end of micromanaging, on the very high end of wanting a certain thing from his staff. Not every single manager is like this. In fact, most of them aren't. I would say most of them are pretty able to sit there and watch you get on with your work, and will only step in if you're doing something completely wrong. Now, I was stepped in on quite a few times. In fact, my manager stopped a few interactions and took over from me when I first started. mainly because he thought I was doing it wrong, and to be honest with you, I could have been doing it wrong. To be honest, I literally, what he used to say to me was, "They're not interested in your hobby. The customer isn't interested in your hobby. You need to be interested in theirs. What you do in your hobby isn't important." Okay, that'd be number one. And he would frame it in a way that, you know, you obviously think you're self-important and that you're the most important person here, and you're not, sort of a thing. And he'd do that to everybody. Like the guy who I replaced, he did that with. The other staff member who's in the store, he did that with. And I just thought it was a very talk-downy way to go over and talk about somebody's interactions with a customer. Now, one thing you would need to get used to when you're starting to work for Games Workshop is your first interactions with customers. The manager will ask you to bring the customer to near where they're sitting, and will sit there and watch you and take notes as you talk to this person. Does that sound awkward? Yes. Is it awkward? Yes. It's awkward as fuck. I hated it. It's one of the main parts of my job that I absolutely hated. I couldn't stand it. Even when I was starting as a manager, my trainer would observe me talking to different customers and would observe me going over different things and talking to them. And thankfully, in my first interaction with the customer, I had a really good one. And he's very impressed, and he left thinking, okay, this guy is going to do okay. In my staff one, though, I almost never got it right. And my manager was somebody who basically was more stick than carrot. He would never give you any compliments. He would never tell you you've done anything right. He would never tell you that you're doing a good job. Essentially, you always feared for your job with this guy. And as far as I know, even though not every manager's like that in terms of being intensive, almost every Games Workshop manager will give you some form of that. Will give you some form of, you're replaceable, essentially, because you are. You're just a retail manager, a retail staffer, and they're getting inundated with applications all the time to be a Games Workshop staffer. You're imminently replaceable, right? So, let's look at it further down the road. What will happen if you keep getting interactions wrong? And I'll tell you how to get them right after I've done this bit, right? So I'll get the horrible bit out of the way first. So if you keep getting them wrong, you'll be given more training. Okay? You'll be given more training, and it'll be drilled into you how to do it right. If you keep getting it wrong after that, they may let you go. Because I know it sounds harsh, but you may not be the kind of person who is good at working for Games Workshop. As in, you may not be the kind of person that they want. Are you the kind of person that Games Workshop needs? Probably. If you love the hobby and you want to get other people enthused in the hobby, then yeah, I would say you're exactly the kind of person Games Workshop needs. But are you the kind of person that they want? Probably not. If you're not doing the interactions in the right way. Now, interactions in the store work on one basic premise: asking good questions. Essentially, that's all you're meant to do as a Games Workshop staffer. Now, this can come, and if you've been in Games Workshop, this will ring very, very true to you. If you've gone into Games Workshop and they ask you questions about your hobby, and they won't stop asking you questions, they never give you any answers themselves. They always want to deflect away from themselves and go back to you. What army do you want to do? What do you find cool about that specific unit? What colours do you want to paint that unit in? Yeah, okay, so if you got that unit, how would you expand on it with your army? What else would you get? Okay, well, how would you get that? Well, what draws you to that model, right? Those are the kind of questions that they will be asking you all the time. And you are trained as a Games Workshop staffer to ask those questions near ad nauseum, constantly, all the time. You never stop asking them. And if they ask you anything about your own hobby or your own experience, deflect it and bring it round to a question about them. It's all about the customer. Now, two things on that. I'm going to sip my tea whilst I'm doing this because I've not picked an editor yet. Green tea with honey. Nothing better when you've got a cold. So, for two things. First one is that as a Games Workshop staffer, it's coming from a good place. What they're asking you to do is coming from a good place. Games Workshop were very, very, very happy with the fact that Ann Summers, which is a sex store in the UK, the two stores on the high street where people were asked what's the best customer service, and quite a lot of the time in our shopping mall, the shopping centre where we were, Ann Summers and Games Workshop were neck and neck for who was the best customer service, because we sell very niche products, right? And we fuck the customer in very different ways. Sorry, little insider joke there. But Games Workshop's modus operandi in asking you questions as a customer is based in a good place, okay? They want it to be very customer-centric. They want to be very upfront and talking to you all the time. They want you to be the centre of your experience at Games Workshop. But like everything at Games Workshop, have you ever noticed that it's not quite corporate? That's not what it is. Games Workshop's training is written by nerds who don't know how human interactions work. It's like it's written by an AI who doesn't understand the interactions between two actual sapient beings. And that is why it comes off as very off-putting when Games Workshop staffers ask you constant questions when you're in a Games Workshop store. Because not only is that that's not a guideline in a store, they're trained to do that. And if they don't do that, they will get reprimanded and even disciplined for not asking you questions when you're in the store. Alright? So, there are ways and means to work around that, of course. And the more you're working at a Games Workshop store, the more freedom and leeway you may be given to approach things in your own way, as long as you're making good sales. But some managers that will never happen with, and my manager was one of those, right? He would always maintain complete control on what you were saying and how you were saying it to a customer. If somebody was collecting Grey Knights, for an example, I would not be able to talk about my own Grey Knight experience at all. Which, to me, is extremely counterproductive, because if somebody says, I really like this unit, and I say, oh, well, what do you like about that unit? They say, oh, I like the fact that it's XYZ, and I say, oh, I also like the fact that it's XYZ. I also collect Grey Knights. Not only does that give them a positive affirmation of what they're doing and what they're thinking, but it also gives them positive affirmation that this person who is ingrained in the hobby has also chosen to do the army that you're doing. So you must be doing something right. Okay? It's positive reinforcement. So this is why I don't agree with the fact that you're not allowed to talk about your own armies and your own experience when you work in Games Workshop. But you're not, essentially. Alright, number 2, how are they trained? We've gone over that one already. So, on a Saturday morning, I would be asked to come in before my shift. I was not paid for this. I was asked to come in before my shift and sit upstairs and do a training session with my manager where we would go over different things, different points of entry, different points of how to get the customer in, and how to do different intro games. Like, the best one we did was when we gave each other intro games. That was a good one. When we went downstairs and we basically gave each other introduction games. Now, Games Workshop really love role-playing. And when I say role-playing, I don't mean it in the cool sense where they want to play D&D with you. I mean, with your manager and with your trainer, they will say, oh, this was so fucking awkward, actually. I'm even cringing even thinking about it. So, when I got my own store, my trainer, who was alright, decent bloke at the time, he went a bit off the rails near the end, but he was a decent bloke at the time. He walked in, and he was like, yeah. So we're going to do a bit of role-playing. We're going to do a little bit of, I'm going to walk in as a customer, and you're going to come over to me and, approach me, engage me, and then ask me if I want to do an introduction game. Okay? Okay, and fair enough. Yeah. He actually walked out the store, waited outside, and then came in. And his acting, by the way, was spot on. Like, he walked in, and he had his hands in his pockets, he was looking around, oh, yeah. And I had to go over to him and open a conversation with him, ask him some questions about what he was looking for, and then invite him to have an introduction game, and then I had to give him an introduction game. And it was so fucking awkward, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. But it's just one of those things that, there were ways and means of going about it that I would have really appreciated, and that's if the trainer in particular had injected a bit of humour into it, like saying, look, I know this is awkward, you know what I mean? I know this is, and he has a bit of fun with it, but like I'm still learning as we're going, sort of a thing. But he didn't do that. He was like, we were actually on a movie studio set, and he was actually being really serious and like, no, you shouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're back on the scene. And I was like, okay, fine. You will be asked to do that as a Games Workshop staffer. Fair warning, okay? You will be asked to do roleplay as a Games Workshop staffer. That is just something that you will be asked to do on a weekly basis. Your manager will want you to open them and engage them in conversation, to do a full-on roleplay with them and open them. And if they're a bit of a dick, like mine was, like they will be like the amount of times I had to stop a roleplay and go, listen, I've never had a customer who's this obstinate. Like literally, I've never had a customer be like this, and I think it's kind of unfair that we're training to do a normal. If you're training me to how to handle an obstinate customer, you're doing a really good job. Because, okay, fair enough, let's do that. But if we're not, and we're training how to handle a normal customer coming in, how to get them to do an intro game, this is not what happens normally, and I get the feeling that you're doing this just to be annoying, you know? And, lo and behold, we got into loads of arguments. But, like, he would do that all of the time. He would role-play the most non-committal, non-verbal customer who actually didn't like the hobby, that sort of a thing. And I just really, really rubbed me up the wrong way. But anyway, hopefully you don't get a manager like that, and they actually they actually are doing it from a place of good faith. But what kind of a person is a GW staffer, and do they enjoy their work? I mean, that depends. So my best times at Games Workshop always in the store where I was working in when we were unsupervised because the manager had gone somewhere or done something, gone on holiday, and our store was running really well. We're getting lots of money through the till. We're having lots of fun, and that's generally how a Games Workshop should work, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're going to treat the place like it's heaven and you've made it, then act that way. Don't act like it's this bog standard retail job that's more demanding because you're Games Workshop, quote unquote. And I would say the best fun time I had in the store, as in the own store I was running, was in the first 5 to 6 months of when I was building the store and I wasn't being interfered with and I wasn't having things, I wasn't being told I couldn't do things. We used to have this cutout of a Primara Space Marine that you got, and I used to walk around on my lunchtime. I would walk around the city centre with blister packs, because you would get a one Space Marine blister pack to give to people who wanted to come into the store. I ordered loads of these because they're free. I ordered loads of them, and when they asked me why do you want so many, I said, well, if I'm on the train going home, I'm going to give them out. If I'm walking around, I'm just going to give them out. If I'm at a bar, I'm going to give them out because I want people to be into the hobby. And they were like, okay, fine, cool, And anyway, I would go walking around with this life-size Primara Space Marine cutout on my lunchtime. So I'd lock up the store and go walking around. I'd have a McDonald's, and he'd be sitting next to me having McDonald's, and people would take pictures, and I was fine with that. It was just really funny watching that a Games Workshop manager sitting there eating his Big Mac and there was a Space Marine sitting next to him. It just looked hilarious, and I would get loads of pictures taken of me and shit like that. I'd be tagged in stuff and things, and even there'd been other hobbyists from other stores saying, "Hey, the GW manager in our city's at the local McDonald's and blah blah, or he's in the local whatever," and he just and it was fun. It was a fun thing. I'd take him around, and I ended up calling him Pierre. Pierre the Primara Space Marine, and we gave him a name tag. So he actually had a name tag on him, and I'd carry him around and I'd sit there and I used to, as a little thing, if I went to a coffee store, I would stand him outside facing inwards, so it was like he was looking into the store, and it was just little things like that. They really got people interested, saying, "Oh, what's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a Primara Space Marine." "Oh, look, it's one of these. That's a Games Workshop model. Look. Hey, do you want to come in for an intro game?" The amount of intro games I got, people following me back after my lunch break and getting an introduction game into the hobby, just because, I'd walk around with Pierre and they'd see me with him and be like, "Oh, this is really cool. That's really cool," right? I got a phone call. After doing that for a month, I got a phone call saying Games Workshop don't advertise. Just stop doing that. It's just one of those things. And that was around about the start of when it started to fall away for me, my love for the job and the hobby. because I got more and more phone calls like that. Don't do this, don't do that, don't say this, don't say that, don't go here, don't go there. You know, push this, don't push that. And it got too much for me. So, if you're the kind of person who loves Games Workshop unconditionally and doesn't want to pull them up on anything and just wants to be a part of growing the hobby for, let's be honest, not that much monetary gain, if you're happy doing that, if you're in a good relationship where you're in a nice flat and you love the hobby and 50% off your models will go a long way, and you just want to be a cog in the wheel, Games Workshop's the job for you, my friend. You may be what they want. Especially if you're constantly enthused and happy, right? They cannot handle people with depression. They cannot handle people with anxiety. They don't know what to do. They're nerds. They don't know how humans act or feel. They're sociopathic nerds. So do not go in, if you're not in a great place in your life mentally, do not go working for Games Workshop. They'll break the shit out of you. And they will not understand how or why they're doing it, right? But that is, if you're going to enjoy the job at Games Workshop, if you're anything like me, you'll enjoy those times where you're left alone and you're left to grow the hobby with other hobbyists. Those are times that you'll love, and to be honest with you, those times are worth all the bad times, for the most part. If I wasn't running my own store and seeing it sort of, my autonomy taken away from me bit by bit, which was heartbreaking, I'd probably still be there, working Games Workshop, to be honest with you. But that is how you're going to enjoy the hobby. You need to go into it or enjoy working Games Workshop. If you're going into it with your eyes open, knowing full well what they expect of you, as I've just said, and how they're going to train you, and how they're going to go about having you there in the store and having you as being a manager, then yeah, you could enjoy your time at Games Workshop. Other than that, I wouldn't recommend working for them, unless you're in a position that you are in very happy to be there. You're very happy to be not getting that much money, because in Games Workshop do not pay you very much. Okay, if you are living with your wife or girlfriend or husband or whatever in a nice flat, and you just need a job to help with the rent, GW could be the one for you, because in terms of, if you get a decent manager, you could be there for years and years and years and years, and you could work your way up and still be there decades down the line. Every normal guy who's working with Games Workshop for that amount of time looked out, and they told me that they looked out. They started with a good manager. They loved their job working there because they didn't see any of the horror stories that other people were seeing in terms of their management or staffers. They got their own store, and they got their own store at a time when GW didn't really give a shit and were just letting them carry on and do whatever they wanted. And so they were doing all sorts of things in the store without them being, climbed upon. It wasn't so corporate. And when they were done with that, they became corporate. They became part of head office on much more money. And so they were going to stay with Games Workshop until they retire. Those are the kinds of people who are Games Workshop lifers. And unfortunately, that class of people aren't making it easy for anybody else to enter into the hobby. A really good manager at Games Workshop, and I've met a few, was saying, hey guys, come on in, come work for Games Workshop. I'm at the top of the mountain, but here's some rope. Come up, the weather's good, let's make some money together, right? Whereas most of the managers and management in Games Workshop were shouting down at you, throwing rocks at you, saying, get the fuck off my mountain. Unfortunately. And that's just how it goes. So, if you are in a position in life where you can put up with not great wages, to take the chance on Games Workshop that you might get a good manager, go for it. I definitely do suggest that you go for it, especially if you get on with that manager straight away. I was a fool. I wasn't getting on with my manager even in the interview. I was getting really weird vibes from him. I was just getting really strange vibes. God knows how I got the job when I'm thinking about it. But anyway. And the kind of person that they're after is someone who will toe the company line, won't create a fuss, and is wholly subservient to the way that they think and the way that they want to do business. If you're not that kind of person, you probably shouldn't be working there, or you should work there to get your deposit, to get your discount, and as soon as you've had enough, leave. Anyway, that is working Games Workshop. I was only supposed to do a 10-minute video, but because of my voice. But there you go. There's 25 minutes, I guess. Love you all long time. Let me know how your applications go if you are applying. And yes, I will be replying to you if you give me more sensitive information that I was willing to bring into the video. I will get back to you. All right. Love you all long time. I'll speak to you soon.